Live. Hey, everybody. We're here with another episode of Comics with Curmudgeons. Brought to you by myself, Imperatus, and my good friend here, Doc. We may or may not have some people joining us. We'll see. But today, we will be talking about underrated comic book teams. And there are quite a few. Everybody's heard of the Justice League, and everybody's heard of the X-Men, and everybody's heard of the Avengers. But who remembers the Defenders?
Other than the TV show.
Right. And I know there's a couple of people who out there who do, like myself. And I know, for example, Nerdrotic is a huge fan of the Defenders. So we exist. But yeah, there's some other teams out there too, like the Next Men or Harbinger. And I wouldn't consider them underrated, but lesser known.
Yeah.
And it is the Next Men, right? That was the John Byrne thing. Okay.
Well, there was two. There was the Next Men, which was the John Byrne thing, and then there was the New Men, which was the Rob Liefeld thing.
That I don't remember.
That was during his Image days before he got kicked out / quit Image and went and started, Arcade and then Awesome and then Arcade. But yeah, it was like probably about his fourth or fifth title, because he had Youngblood first and then Brigade and then Bloodstrike and then something else, Dooms 4, I think, and then the New Men. And the New Men was one of those very, very, very forgettable titles.
Yeah, because I remember seeing pictures of the New Men, and I'm like, or no, not. I'm sorry, the Next Men. And I'm like, what is this? What kind of X-Men ripoff is this?
Yeah, John had a tendency of doing that. There was
1 second. I want to adjust the chat. Hey, Sentinel, how's it going, brother? Hey, Yul, thanks for hopping in. You're welcome to join us if you got time, buddy.
Yeah, man.
More than welcome anytime we're doing one of these, Yul. Absolutely.
Yeah, Stevenson and Jeff Matsuda. It was in Rob's. I guess that would have been what was his Maximum Press? No. His was Extreme Studios. And he had Maximum Press too, and that's when it started getting weird. And
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I stopped paying attention to anything the Image guys did when I didn't get my number 2 for a lot of books after a while.
Yes, well, I mean,
I think everybody did, but
yeah, that was kind of the problem with a lot of the Image stuff. And we could go on a long conversation about how Image and failing to hit release dates was a big reason for the 90s collapse, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I remember, I think I only read 2 issues of New Men, but it was one of those books that crossed over whenever I think Rob did like his Extreme Sacrifice line-wide crossover event where it was just all of his books, and it was a clusterfuck. It was very much of a clusterfuck.
As you and me have talked about before, the 90s were just a clusterfuck to begin with.
Yes, but yeah, no. Getting back to the original thing, yeah. Next Men was, look, I think everybody that had that long run or a long history with the X-Men kind of went and just made clones of the X-Men. Chris did it when he did Sovereign 7 over at DC. Jim obviously did it with Wildcats. Mark Silvestri did it with Cyberforce. Even Rob sort of did it with Bloodstrike, much more Bloodstrike than Youngblood. That Youngblood was his Avengers, or his Teen Titans rather. But yeah, no, he a lot of those guys that had a long run. So, John Byrne going and doing his own X-Men knockoff, not really surprising. I mean, shit, the guy's still doing X-Men, his Elsewhen thing that's on
Mm.
his website. Uh,
I mean, because I can remember when Next Men came out, I wasn't that old,
yeah, it was done through Dark Horse.
but I saw it. I'm like, they don't even have costumes. What the fuck?
Yeah, that was
And that was just also me being young and being used to seeing superheroes in comics or superheroes in costumes. Excuse me.
yeah. I think that's the way a lot of it. A lot of us were. You know, we there was that was kind of ahead of the curve, I guess you could say, in a lot of ways. There was that period in the early 2000s where a lot of superhero books started being people not wearing costumes. When the X-Men ditched their costumes and went to the black biker leather.
Yeah.
Um, when the Authority, other than Midnighter and Apollo, everyone else and Swift, everyone else, no one else had costumes. Jenny Sparks didn't have a costume. Jack Hawksmoor didn't. The Engineer didn't. The Doctor didn't. Um, you know, then there was a bunch of Wildcats version 3, volume 2, and then version 3.0. They ditched any semblance of costumes. The only thing close was Grifter's mask. That's the only thing that he kept.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, he even went to the black body armor and kind of very Splinter Cell type stealth suit.
Yeah.
And he got away from the trench coat and his bandoliers and all that ridiculous 90s shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, how do you feel about them doing an Authority movie?
Oh,
I had a feeling it was going to be part of the answer.
I can't decide.
I mean, it could be good, but I'm not, and I think I've said this to you before. When it comes to DC, I prefer their animation.
I'm kind of the same way.
Although the past couple, I have not been digging the art style. I don't like that Archer style with the real heavy outline. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, they kind of need to get back to the Bruce Timm inspired.
Yep. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, absolutely. But an Authority movie, that one's hard for me. Could it be good? Yes. Is it likely to end up as an LGBT propaganda movie?
It's possible.
Distinctly possible. When fucking Tom Taylor ended up on that book much later, like in the death throes of Wildstorm, he did a lot of that. They wanted to queer everything up. There were some other writers that came on that everything had to, because you had Warren Ellis, that the Apollo and Midnighter relationship was very subdued.
Right. It wasn't in your face.
Yes, it wasn't. And Mark Miller came on and made it more in your face. With them actually, hugging and kissing, and then eventually finishing the series by getting married. And they kind of didn't do that under Ellis. And then everyone that came on after, Robbie Morrison took it way further in when he was on Authority Volume 2. Now, Ed Brubaker kind of toned it way back on Authority Revolution, but when Grant did his 2 issues of the Authority before he just quit and just stopped turning in scripts because he's a bitch. By the way, I will still never ever forgive Grant Morrison for that. And I won't buy anything with his name on it as a result.
He's a bit overrated in my book.
Yeah, but No, I'm getting way off track here. They kind of tried to queer the book up even more and more and more, and making Swift and the engineer and Jack Hawksmoor and everyone being at least a little bi. And I have a feeling that that's going to be more of an influence. They're going to try to stay away from the influence of Warren Ellis, because otherwise they're going to have to give credit to Warren Ellis, and he's still unpersoned by the industry.
Yeah.
So, and especially since they've recently did, like, if you look at the rest of their slate here, it's just the Grant Morrison hour. Everything else is, influenced by something that Grant did, except for the things that are influenced by what Alan Moore did. So everything else is influenced by Grant. So them more than likely ending up doing kind of a Superman and the Authority, which Grant did do. And it was fucking terrible.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Especially considering it wasn't actually the Authority. I do think that is, though, however, one amazingly underrated team.
Yeah, I mean, after hearing you talk about the Authority, I checked out some stuff. I think I told you that.
Yeah.
And I like it. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, did it need to get brought into the DCU? No.
No, it never did.
But from what I read, that what I read was good. I thought, like, a lot of the characters were great, like Jenny Sparks.
Yep.
Take no shit female character. Wow, being a straight white guy, I'm supposed to hate that. Nah, she was a freaking awesome character.
Yes, Jenny Sparks was awesome because she never tried to, you were never supposed to like Jenny.
Right.
At no point did they ever try to beat you into liking Jenny as a person. She was supposed to be a miserable bitch that is like a total misanthrope and a nihilist.
Wow, that explains why I like her.
Yes, exactly. Right?
All the characters, though, Midnight and Apollo, it's like, who cares that they're gay? They're cool characters.
Yeah, because they were absolutely bastards.
Oh, yeah, everybody on the team was an ass in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, and that's the thing. They were never supposed to be the heroes. They were the people that did a job because there was nobody else to do it at that point.
Right.
The whole thing starts as the result because, it falls, the Authority stems out of Warren Ellis's, Stormwatch run.
Right.
And he had Jenny, Swift, and Jack as the black team, which was, the Black Ops team they were Stormwatch Black.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only team that survived when the, Skywatch got infected by the Xenomorphs and killed the entire team. The only two people left that survived were Jackson King and, Christine Treelane and they lost their, they had to crash the orbital platform that they had a space station. They had to crash that into the sun in order to kill the Xenomorphs. Everyone else died. The entire team was killed except for the black team that wasn't there at the time.
Right. And then they had to recruit pretty much a whole new team.
Yeah.
That's where they got what the hell was that guy's name?
Engineer.
The engineer, the guy that ran around barefoot.
The doctor.
Oh, was it just the doctor?
Yeah, it was just the doctor. He was Earth Shaman.
Right.
And Midnighter and Apollo, because Midnighter and Apollo were retired and Jenny dragged them out of retirement. And
which, if I remember correctly, Midnighter was definitely not appreciative of.
No, he was really not happy about. And
Apollo took it a little better, not so much Midnighter.
Yeah, because he's the Superman, and the Batman wanted to just kind of go off and have his retirement. Yes, he's like, I did my job, and now it's time to get a break. And but I mean the authority starts with just the quote of, there's nobody left to save the world, so we're going to do it. It's that's the way that it starts, because there is no one left. That was the UN's Avengers. Stormwatch was the Avengers of that universe. And if all of the Avengers die and you only have, essentially their Hawk Girl, their Aquaman for land, and Jenny was Shazam, sorta.
Kind of, yeah, in a way.
But so they, and the engineer ended up being their Green Lantern. Obviously, Midnight Earth Apollo is the Batman and the Superman, and the Doctor was the Spectre.
I was gonna say more Martian Manhunter, but yeah, the Spectre works too.
Yeah, because he is magic. And so they had, and it connected back to the last storyline from the first run of Stormwatch with their Change or Die arc, where the High, which was another Superman, had recruited basically a Justice League to change the world. And Henry Bendix, who was the weatherman, decided, no, you're not going to. And that's when he went bad. He wanted to change the world too, but he wanted to be the one in control. So he killed them. He sent Stormwatch to go and kill that world's kind of more like a JSA. But they had, the previous incarnation of the Doctor, the previous incarnation of the Engineer. And so, it was like the Silver Age, Green Lantern, the Silver Age, or actually Jenny would be the Flash. What am I talking about?
The Flash, or maybe Black Lightning.
Yeah. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Yeah, she's the Flash, because she could turn to electricity and basically move it to
electricity, and what they've been doing with Shazam these days, leaning more into that.
Yeah, but regardless, so, and then it was kind of watch the Avengers kind of morph into a twisted Justice League, and they were never meant to be heroes. They were a bunch of pieces of shit that just happened to have a relatively good moral compass when it comes to protecting people. That's it. Otherwise, they're kind of assholes. They're a bunch of drunks, drug addicts, debauched. They just go and fuck whatever they want, whoever they want. I mean, it got really kind of dirty. Although I guarantee the one story we will not see. There's actually two stories that we won't see. We won't see the evil Doctor, because
no, that one got really dark.
Really especially when he time traveled back to molest the Engineer when she was a little girl.
That ranks up there with the whole Reverse Flash, though I don't know if it was actually real or the joke. I think it's more of a joke, where he said he went back in time on Barry's first date and jerked him off at super speed, so he felt that made him think he came at the mere touch of a woman.
I'm pretty sure that's probably just a meme.
But because I've seen a whole list of shit that the Reverse Flash has done to him, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Some of that is just petty.
Yes.
Like pushing him down the stairs one time. Like, what?
Yes. Yeah. So, none of them were good people. We won't see that, and we won't see fake Jack Kirby like comic book Jack Kirby creating a team of Avengers where it's actually Captain America, the Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, the Wasp, Ant-Man or Giant Man, and the Vision fighting the Wildstorm Justice League. Yeah, we won't see that.
No. But yeah, I mean, I would have to say though, the Authority does fit into the topic of today.
Yes, it does, because
They're
I
very
think
underrated.
they really are.
And they did him no favors bringing him into the mainline DC.
In my opinion, they never did any favors by bringing any of the Wildstorm universe into the mainline DC. Especially once they started just kind of co-opting all of the alien tech into Kryptonian or Martian, like the World Engine from Man of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's from the Kerubim, which is the Wildcats alien race.
Okay.
That Mr. Majestic is part of.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to read a lot of the Wildstorm stuff.
Yeah.
At some point, I should probably go back and, read it.
In fairness, there's a lot of it that's trash.
It was a 90s imprint publication, whatever you want to, so it's going to, I mean, I would imagine after a while when they shed some of that 90s excess.
Yes.
It got better.
About 3 years in.
That's not that bad, really. 36 issues. If even that.
Because Warren Ellis came on to the Stormwatch around issue 37. James Robinson came on to Wildcats, and then Alan Moore, and then James Robinson again. Around issue 25. And that's when that started getting okay. So yeah, you started getting better writers, and it ceased being just Jim's friends.
Right.
And now, in fairness, though, like Wetworks never really got good.
I mean, it's funny hearing you say that, people that weren't just Jim's friends.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how he was handling things at DC as well.
Well,
especially now that he would just as much, if not more power.
It is a good question. However, I think we do kind of have an answer for that. There was I've heard Zach talk about it on his channel. I've read it. I read it a couple of years ago when it actually was getting kind of crowdfunded. It was it was a book called The Wild Storm. I think it was called The Wild Storm. Hold on, I have. It was essentially oral history of Wildstorm. Let's see. Let's see.
As I'm keeping an eye on for any Twitter DMs, they finally posted a trailer for the new History of the World. I'm scared.
Oh, God. It was called Wild Times, an oral history of Wildstorm Studios. And it has a lot of interviews with writers, artists, editors that all worked at Wildstorm through the 90s, through the 2000s, basically up until the book came out in 2017, so it would have been about 5 years after essentially the end of Wildstorm, because Wildstorm ended in around 2011, 2000, right before New 52. Because they ended the Wildstorm universe right before they launched the New 52, and that's why they were bringing in the Wildstorm characters, because they had ended that universe. And it is really good. And Jim did do a very good job of trying to balance um, and keep the company profitable, even in very lean times. Um, Sometimes it was been by bringing in, managing editors and stuff like that. I think he's just really, I think he's really handcuffed by the kind of corporate hierarchy of, you know, Warner, Disney, whatever the hell it's called now,
Right.
or Discovery, not Disney, Discovery, Time Warner, Warner Brothers Discovery. I don't know what the fuck it's called, but I think he's really handcuffed by that. I mean, he keeps having to shed editorial staff,
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be a come to Jesus moment for the entire comic industry
Oh
at
yeah.
some point where they're kind of
It wouldn't
their
be the first time it happened.
their auditors, the big company auditors, the industry's been able to play kind of a shell game with, well, we keep our profits at this level, we've moved this many units, but they've had to do it by constant relaunches. They've had to do it by adding more titles than the line can really support, that the editorial staff can edit. And they've been able to keep that stuff pretty steady, but they just do it through a shell game of, well, all the books that were selling 100,000 before are now selling 50, but every new book we release only sells 20. So we have to sell, for every 2 books we used to sell, we have to sell those same 2 books plus 5 other books that only sell 20, because those first one, and that we're still able to move 200,000 units. We just do it with 7 titles now instead of 2. And that's the way they've had to play it, and they do it by, and our costs have stayed about the same because we just keep paying people less, so anybody with any talent leaves. And eventually they're going to have a come to Jesus moment where the auditors are going to be like, you're moving the same units, but you're doing it by publishing 85 titles instead of 40.
It happened to DC what, in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah, the implosion.
The implosion there, you had the 90s crash. It wouldn't be the first. Yeah, hell, it's even along the same lines of the video game crash of the 80s. You keep putting out shit, you're gonna lose a lot of money.
Eventually, yeah. Although we did get the wonder that is ET.
I own that as a kid.
I didn't, so I obviously saved a couple dollars more than you did.
I was like 6, dude. I wasn't buying shit at that point.
Yeah, I would have probably been 5, so yeah, about the same.
Yeah.
I do miss my Atari though. But so no, there's DC is in a weird situation. Now, I think that their move to do these films is really a massive attempt. I know I talked about it on Aficionados this weekend, but I feel like the Authority is going to be connected to like the Waller show.
Yeah.
And they're going to be kind of set up. It's going to be kind of a villain movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be set up as the alternative to, like, Waller gets a bigger budget and is able to actually create her own task force instead of just having to blackmail villains into doing it.
Which honestly wouldn't be a bad thing. It gets the taste of Suicide Squad out of people's mouths.
Yeah, exactly. And now I'm betting they're going to go with Jenny Quarks instead of Jenny Sparks.
Probably.
Either Jenny Quarks or Jenny Quantum, whichever one they're calling her these days. Because And I bet I know how they're going to do that because it's going to be coming out around 2025. Jenny stops aging around 19,
Mm-hmm.
but she ages normally to that point.
Right.
So it's going to be coming out in 2025. She will be the spirit of the 21st century. They discovered the century babies at the turn of the millennium, or they discovered them back in the 20th century. And she got basically captured and raised by the Midnighter and Apollo, but as part of you know uh, Amanda Waller's team, like her authority task force. So Jenny's not going to be good or bad. She's going to be a little amoral. Um, and so I think that that's kind of the way they're going to end up going. It'll make sense to use the spirit of the 21st century instead of the spirit of the 20th. But
Yeah.
I think it's their way. They're trying to build out some of these smaller titles because I think it would not shock me to see them try to actually release another authority title.
Well, yeah, I was about to say too, because I think if the movies do well, and because they did say they wanted to try to tie everything together.
Yeah.
Into video games, comics, movies, TV shows, that if the movies and shows do okay, then the comics will see a bump.
Oh, that's been the
Right,
pipe dream of comics for years.
right. But if they're smart, and in a lot of ways they are smarter than Marvel,
yeah,
they'll tie shit into when like a big movie's coming out. They'll start hyping up trades or graphic novels or the ongoing, whatever the case may be, or launch a new series to kind of be like, hey, this movie that's coming out, here, check this stuff out. That's gives you a bit of background on what you might see.
Yeah. I'm hoping that they do that, and it wouldn't shock me if they try to do a authority book that is connected to Waller.
Or some kind of, at least like a mini series or something.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to probably try to forget the Superman and the Authority Grant Morrison book. But
such a weird fit.
It really was. But they'll, and I think that that's going to be their way of trying to build that as a marquee team and a marquee title for DC Comics, and try to build them into ceasing to be an underrated team and starting to be a
more mainstream team.
Yes, a more mainstream title. So I'm sorry, I've been going on and on about the fucking Authority for the last.
Well, it's all right. We can actually say you're kind of, no, it's a bad joke. I'm not going to make it.
I am the Authority on the Authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes my age shows in my humor.
Yes, I know. I'm the same way.
But I mean, so let's take a little break from DC because there's a couple other underrated teams on that side of things.
Yes.
And actually, one of them is kind of, actually, we'll go with that one anyways. I would actually say the JSA is underrated.
Oh, which incarnation are you talking about?
Well, that's part of the problem.
Yes.
There's a couple versions of the JSA. I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I mean, I have never been a huge JSA fan.
I kind of like them because in a way it's still DC's style of doing things, and it's essentially just another Justice League book.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have the same tropes. Yeah, obviously there's a Green Lantern on each team,
and
there's a Flash, and then you have Wildcat is the Batman equivalent.
He's their Batman, yes.
But that's it. There's no Superman equivalent.
Depending on which incarnation, it could be Captain Marvel.
True.
Or the way that possibly even Starman.
Mm.
He's sort of, I mean, not really, but yeah.
they didn't hit all the same beats.
No,
As far as characters go, it was a chance for other people to kind of be like, hey, check out these other heroes.
yes, it really was. And that is something that I will give the JSA credit for. Mr. Terrific,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, it's their opportunity to use their a little bit more cheesy heroes.
Yeah.
They're more outdated characters. The same way that
Right, bringing in like Hour Man and Sandman and Dr. Midnight.
Exactly. In a lot of the same ways that Marvel tries to every so often with bringing back the Invaders.
Mm-hmm.
It's their more classic, little more hokey, more cliched, stereotypical superhero
Right.
characters. They're old timey characters, and I mean, yeah, more than likely it's just to keep trademarks and copyrights still active.
Yeah, probably.
But I mean, it is an interesting attempt there, and I don't know. I'm not a huge. I'm not really. It's not that I'm not a big JSA fan, and because honestly, I'm kind of not. I dipped out of the Stargirl show when it started just being all JSA all the time. Mostly because it wasn't really the JSA; it was just a bunch of teenage girls. But I'm not because I was never a huge DC person. I'm
right. Yeah, I know that.
I'm not, and so those characters they don't hold that kind of place in my heart. They're more a little, oh, it's the hokey book. Okay, cool. And that's great for the huge DC aficionados that like love that golden age stuff. It's great for that. Not so much for me.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was first introduced to comics with DC, as a lot of kids were, Batman and Superman.
Of course.
And then the first Marvel stuff that I got introduced to was Spider-Man,
which is also about par for the course.
Mm-hmm. And then as I got a little older, I discovered stuff like Conan.
Okay.
Which I fell in love with as a kid.
Yeah, I mean,
who wouldn't?
Well, I didn't, but
yeah, we've had the conversation.
Yeah,
You're not a huge fantasy fan.
No, not so
which
much.
is funny because the only two mangas I would ever recommend you, because I know about your thing with names. One is called Claymore, which it's all European names.
Okay.
So, like the main character's name is Claire.
Okay.
But it's a fantasy setting.
Yes.
Dark fantasy, but fantasy.
All right.
And of course, the other one I'm sure you've heard of is Berserk.
Yes, I've heard of Berserk.
There's no really wacky names in that other than the main character's name is Guts.
Okay, that's not really a name. It's just kind of a nickname. So, all right.
Or Griffith or Koska. It's all more not wacky, like, what does that say?
Yes.
Did they really put those consonants next to each other?
Yeah. And that's my thing. It's mostly because a lot of the names sound so close to one another that I confuse the characters with regularity, and then I am bored.
Yeah, no, I could absolutely see that.
I'm like, I can't even remember which character is which. So is that Yukio or is that whatever the hell the next name is? I don't know. And I tap out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend also some of the Gundam manga that are out there. And just think, you could read the manga that has, Space Mexico in it.
Yes, I can read about Space Mexico.
But the problem with not a lot, but quite a few Gundam series, it's a combination of normal names.
Okay.
Like the main character of the original Gundam, his name was Amuro Ray. Not really that bad.
Yeah.
Or Bright Noah is the name of another character.
Bright Noah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you also have Japanese names in some cases. A lot of the naming conventions in Gundam are just strange.
Well,
Not like in a Japanese way, just strange.
okay. I can get behind that. I can understand that.
Yeah, it's trying to go for, oh, look, in the future they were using these different names. Like,
Yes, exactly.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But that stuff again does not have the, not sound racist because it's not, the overtly Japanese naming conventions.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I'm better with like anime
Mm-hmm.
than I am with
Because you're hearing it.
Well, A, I'm hearing it, and B, the characters have a distinctly different look. Whereas on the
Right.
page, they
Because of the
can,
black and white.
yeah, they can very often tend to. Which one is this? Which of the four people with very similar names is it?
Mm-hmm.
And I
You're not
can't
wrong.
keep it straight. Where it's a little easier in the anime, and that's why I was better with anime than I ever was with manga.
Well, all the things I just mentioned all have anime forms as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I think at least Berserk might even be on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary.
Yes.
Because that's anime / manga has made people pitch a fit multiple times over the years. It's when it goes dark, it goes dark.
Okay.
No holds barred, like, oh. There's a one story arc where there's like this moth demon terrorizing a village and trying to turn the children of the village into things like it. And so the main character Guts is running through this village that's on fire. You know, he's got the giant sword over his shoulder. He's got these demon children flying through the air after him. And what is he using as bait? A perfectly normal child hanging from the tip of his sword.
That.
And has no qualms about doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems a little strange.
I really kind of glossed over a lot of shit.
Okay.
I'm trying not to spoil it.
Yeah.
But there is some, when Berserk and Claymore as well goes dark, that's all about genetically engineering women to be living weapons.
Okay.
To fight this war against dragons on some other continent, which people don't even know exists. Like everybody's on like this island and they think it's the only landmass on ever, period.
Okay.
It goes to a really fucked up place.
I'll take your word for it. Like, but when it comes back to the naming things, it was just bugging me, and I was trying to remember all the names. Even as a big X-Men fan,
it did get crazy after a while.
Well, during the Claremont period, he had 3 characters. He had Yukio.
Oh, yeah.
Yoriko.
Mm-hmm.
And Mariko.
Yeah.
And Yukio was
the
Storm's
thief.
Friend.
Right, the thief.
Mariko was Wolverine's almost wife, and
right.
Yukio was Deathstrike.
Right.
And whenever they'd start naming them like by name, I always had a trouble just trying to keep which one was which straight.
Right.
And I'd be like, especially with Yoriko and Yukio, I don't know why, because they're so similar in names. I mean, Granted, I guess for them it'd be like John and Jim, and those aren't the same name. But
right.
then again, I still fall into that lost convention of screwing up Scott and Steve. I people named Scott, people named Steve. I get them confused. Especially one of my friends, she dated a dude named Steve. I actually literally have to sit there and think about it. And then ended things with him and then started dating a dude named Scott, who's actually really fucking cool. But it takes all of my attention to not screw it up and call Steve or Scott Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So, I mean, that's probably the way the Japanese people look at, John and Jim or Scott and Steve. Like, your names are too fucking similar. Yeah. Well, so's Yuriko and Yukio. So, either that or I'm just a big dummy. I don't know.
No, I can see that. I can honestly see that. It's very much so yeah, I could definitely see it because me doing the reenactment stuff that I used to, it was kind of almost the same thing in a similar way because I knew people by a certain name.
Yes.
And then when I hear somebody call them by the name they use outside of the reenactment scene, I went, who?
Yeah. Oh, I know. Dude, you don't got to tell me that one. I know that when you're starting to get into people with multiple that go by multiple names.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you don't even got to explain that one to me. I know that. I know the pain there.
Like, it was funny because a buddy of mine that I'm still really good friends with, I game a lot with, he knew me by the reenactment name for the longest time. And he'd refer to me as that. A lot of people from that scene would, even talking to me online or on the phone or hanging out in person at a non-reenactment thing. Yeah. So when his buddies found out, when he started using my real name, because I stopped doing that stuff, his buddies that we were gaming with were like, who are you talking to? They're like, oh, we thought that was your that, the first name that you knew by was your real name. I was like, no.
No, dude, that
would be, it would have been a lot cooler growing up as Magnus and not my actual name.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's hit Marvel a little bit here.
I got one.
Okay, go ahead.
The Exiles, but I'm talking like the first 100 issues, nothing that's been done since in the last 15 years.
I will admit I am not overly, I know who they are. I know what the book is, but I'm not familiar with it in any way, shape, or form.
It was a Suicide Squad team, a Suicide Squad-like team from the multiverse that was doing some fucking Quantum Leap slider shit.
Okay. Was it known villains or just multiverse versions?
No, it wasn't even necessarily. It was a mix of heroes and villains.
Wait, it was just multiverse versions or just complete new characters?
Sometimes it would be complete new characters. Sometimes it was multiverse versions that you were aware of. Like two of the characters that were kind of long running in it were Age of Apocalypse Blink.
Okay.
She was kind of the main character. And Age of Apocalypse, eventually they added this one in, a bit Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth. But you also had the design from the Age of Apocalypse Morph.
Okay.
AKA Changeling. But from a different universe where he was like the leader of the Avengers. You had another completely new universe, Mimic.
Okay.
You had the first issue has a completely new character that was called Magnus, that was the son of a Magneto and Rogue.
Okay.
And for instance, you also had Nocturne, who was a completely new character in that book, and it was Kurt Wagner's daughter from a different universe.
Okay.
But she couldn't teleport, she could possess people. But she looked like a female Nightcrawler. Yeah, because she could kind of possess people.
Okay.
There was a lot of characters, because characters could die and just they were done for the book. That was it. The only characters that really stuck around, and it wasn't until Claremont came on and kind of he brought Betsy over, Psylocke, and turned it into the Betsy show.
Mm.
And killed off Blink, like just kind of sidelined her, sent her off, and she ended up crystallized. Oh, there was a weird version of Thunderbird.
Mm.
That had been the Thunderbird from a universe where he was Apocalypse's Horseman of War.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
Yeah. There was a kind of evil Spider-Man that had merged with the Carnage symbiote. There was a very, very evil Hyperion that ended up trying to take over parts of the multiverse. Oh, it was Hyperion possessed by Proteus.
Ooh.
Yeah. Let's see. An evil, corrupted Vision.
Let me guess. He was corrupted by Ultron.
Yes. Let's see. But the big kind of main characters that were kind of the longest running were Nocturne, Thunderbird, Sabretooth, Mimic, Blink, and Morph. They were kind of the core of the team, and some of the other ones would die periodically. They brought Longshot in for a period of time.
That kind of makes sense too, since they kind of pushed him to the sideline in the mainline book.
They brought in Doom 2099.
So they pulled in some notable characters and some pretty good ones.
Yeah.
At that.
Oh, the Heroes Reborn Bucky.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, a bunch of different. There was one where it was just all of the different multiverses Wolverines. Which was kind of ridiculous.
Sounds it. Still, though, from what you're telling me, it sounds like I should actually check this out.
Yeah, and like the first, let's see, it would have been first 90 issues were excellent. Oh, there was a Sue Storm that became Madam Hydra.
Oh, Jesus.
Spider-Man 2099. A couple other characters, but it was really good, and it kind of gave you that the what if fix, because there was no what if book around this time. So it kind of gave you that fix, and they weren't doing much. I mean, you had the Ultimate line at Marvel at the time, but they weren't doing the kind of ridiculously overdone multiverse bullshit that they've been doing over the past 15 years. Basically, since Jonathan Hickman came on to when he came on to Avengers and Fantastic Four.
Right.
Ever since then, it's just been every different, there's been Spider versus, there's Gwen versus, there's Venom versus, there's infinity warps. There's every different mashup character from every different potential reality in all of these books, and it's so overdone. This was back when it was all quarantined to this one book. And it only crossed over with the regular Marvel universe like once.
Okay, did it at least make sense when it did that?
Yeah, it brought in Beak. It added Beak to the team for a period of time.
Okay.
It was done during it crossed over during the Chuck Austin era of Uncanny X-Men. So it actually improved that, but it was only for like 2 issues. Literally 2 issues. And then I think that was during its world tour arc, where for like 12 issues, every 2 issues, it was in every 1 to 2 issues, it was in a different universe. And it went through the Heroes Reborn universe, the New Universe, the 2099 universe, every different universe. The Age of Apocalypse, a couple more. I don't recall all of them. But yeah, it's a good, fun story, and it's about 90 issues. And other than kind of Blink and Morph, you're really not sure if anyone's going to survive.
And what's kind of nice is too, that's almost a way of doing a ongoing Elseworld or an ongoing What If.
Yes, exactly. And since there wasn't a What If book, everything got done in there, and you get that just enough of a taste, and that you'd be like, okay, well, that's what happened. What would happen if the Vision got controlled by Ultron?
Yeah.
Or Sue Storm joined Hydra, or
like you said, there's another one you mentioned, the evil Spider-Man.
Yeah, an evil Spider-Man that had merged with the symbiote. Bad Gambit. Like if he never would have,
redeemed himself.
Yeah, if he would have stayed as part of the Marauders. All that stuff.
Yeah, I got thoughts on that. I was never really a fan of that.
It was a retcon.
Yeah, it definitely was, but I guess it's like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah, but then again, Chris Claremont's whole ideas for all of what he was going to do with Sinister and Gambit and all those things, he never quite had his mind made up on any of that shit.
You can kind of tell a little bit.
Yeah, and then I don't remember who it was. I think it was Scott Lobdell kind of added in I think that might have been Joe Kelly and Steve Siegel that kind of finally decided how to flesh out Gambit's history.
Yeah, I mean, at least they fleshed it out and they didn't keep it vague the entire time.
Yeah, but it was what? 80 issues after he showed up.
I mean, at the same time, look how long it took us to really get into Wolverine's backstory, even mildly.
Yeah, we shouldn't have.
No, I mean, I don't think we should have gone past Weapon X.
Yeah, that's I think,
and that was still how many years after he was introduced as a character?
Quite
a few.
About 16, 17, because that would have been 91 or 92.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with Wolverine as it was with Gambit. I mean, in some cases, I think they did that in less time.
Yeah, I think Gambit would have been a little less time.
So, I mean, I get what they were doing there because they've done it before with certain characters. And I also agree with you that we shouldn't have gotten too deep into Wolverine's backstory. It should have ended with Weapon X, because some of it's like, really?
Yeah.
That ranks up there with the what they did to Nightcrawler.
Oh God, with the Draco.
Yeah, with that, and there's that whatever they refer to, Wolverine's type of mutant as, and there's a group of them. And
the Lupine.
That's like, oh, for God's sake.
And somehow connected to the start of Rome.
Yeah, I see where they were going with that because the two founders of Rome, Romulus and
Romulus and
Remus,
Remus
were supposedly,
descended from a wolf.
raised by wolves.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, sure, but
Yeah, exactly. And no, but all that, first of all, I don't consider any of the shit from Wolverine Origins, that were Wolverine, the Daniel Way
right.
Wolverine Origins book. I don't consider any of it canon.
I mean, some of it is just, it's like, why?
Yeah. Because it explains that they're not even Homo sapiens superior. They are Homo lupinus or something.
That was
Yeah.
something you may have talked about before. The X-Men, every so often in their lifespan, they've got things going nicely, and then somebody goes, hey, let's overcomplicate things just cause.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I mean, for every like one good extra wrinkle that they've added, there's like 15 bad ones that they don't know how to.
yeah. Like the whole thing with the acolytes, I was like, oh, okay, these guys are going to be a major part of what's going on. Oh, no, they're not. They're pretty much forgotten about after 10 issues.
Well, part of that was because Chris quit.
Okay, fair enough. That's true.
He created them, and then 3 issues in, he quit.
I think that definitely hurt the X-Men for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, because
Sure, it was the most popular comic in the 90s, but
they had brought Byrne back to do Uncanny and gave Chris Adjectiveless. And then they let Jim basically start controlling the plotting. And that's when Chris quit.
I can understand that.
He's like, I've been doing this for 17 years. I understand Jim's great. He's a great artist, and he has his ideas, but
yeah, I mean, you're talking to the guy who turned the X-Men around from being a reprint book for most of its lifetime.
Yes.
Into one of the best-selling comics for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And you're gonna sit there and go, yeah, we got somebody who's gonna, we don't, it's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. So Chris felt kind of shit on. And then Byrne, and then when Chris quit, John Byrne, even though he was already doing Uncanny, started scripting the issues. If you look at X-Men 4 through 8, 10, something like that, Byrne scripted those. But plots were by Jim. Story by Jim, scripts by Byrne. And he was doing Uncanny at the time. And then he quit both books. And that's why they hired Scott Lobdell. Because he was literally walking down the hall when Bob Harris needed a writer.
Right.
I'm not kidding. He happened to be walking down the hall and he said, can you write me a script for X-Men? I need it in like 2 days. And that's how he became the writer for X-Men for like 5 years. Because they gave him Uncanny because Fabian had X-Force at the time, but he took over X-Men as well.
That's another team we should be talking about today.
X-Force?
Not X-Force, X-Factor.
X-Factor, that was going to be one on my list of underrated teams.
For people like you and me who are reading the X-Men, and I went back and got like the Marvel Masterworks, which was like, X-Men 1 through 10 and then 11 through 20, those old hardbound ones. I knew that the old X-Men weren't, I knew the X-Men weren't always Wolverine and Colossus and Storm and Nightcrawler and that, the new X-Men, so to speak. And then when I saw X-Factor, I was like, oh, hey, this is just the old X-Men. I wonder what's going on here. And I knew Cyclops had stuck around in the X-Men for a while.
See, I'm going to have to disagree a little bit on that because I actually did not like the original 5 version of X Factor that much.
I didn't say I liked it. I was saying I at least knew who the characters
Oh
were.
yeah,
Where a lot of
okay.
other people might not. I knew of Beast actually through Avengers.
Avengers.
Iceman I actually knew of from the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Cyclops was still in the X-Men, and I knew who Jean was because of the old stuff. But yeah, no, I wasn't really a big fan of it either. It's like, oh well, we're supposed to be an anti-mutant team that deals with mutants, but we're secretly helping them. Like, what?
Yeah, the initial premise for X Factor was wildly complicated for no particular reason, except for to distinguish it from the Xavier school.
Which I'm trying to remember what was going on at the time with the X-Men. Was that after that?
They died in Dallas.
That had happened already.
Yes. Fall of the Mutants had happened.
Well, Fall of the Mutants happened during X Factor too, because that's when they introduced Archangel.
Yeah.
But that was only like something like issue 6 or 7 or something like that, or 10, somewhere in like the first 12 issues or so, I think.
Let me look at this real quick. I'm gonna pull it up because, all right, X Factor launches. What? X Factor Volume 1 launches 1986. No, Mutant Massacre is where Archangel.
Okay, so it was issue number 6.
Yeah. Because, and then Uncanny. Let's see, that would have been around issue 2.
It was like, there's definitely 2 something, I think.
227 is Fall of the Mutants. But
because I know that was definitely something they referenced in the X Factor books.
Yeah,
they thought the X-Men were dead. They thought that multiple times, and up until I think maybe Inferno.
Okay, yeah, that was because that Inferno is when they all did finally. Whenever the X Factor realized that
the X-Men were still alive.
The X-Men were still alive, because that's when they did meet. But I guess it might have been. Was it? Let's see, what would have come out. Okay, Cyclops had kind of dipped out.
Yeah, he had that battle for leadership with Storm.
Yeah.
And she beat him, and he leaves the team. And
yeah.
That's when he meets Madeline Pryor and is the cargo pilot, which ended up leading into the crossover with Alpha Flight.
Yeah, but let's see. Hold on. Okay, because 201 is where baby Nathan's born, and when he fights Storm for leadership.
Okay.
So Maddie's already been there for 40 issues at that point.
All right.
But him and Maddie leave.
Right.
And then he sees Jean on TV because
right, that's right, the Fantastic Four founder in the energy cocoon.
Yes, in the energy cocoon. So he tells Maddie, I'll be back. I gotta go see what happened. And he kind of abandons Maddie in San Francisco, and then the Marauders come after her, and the X-Men save her.
Right. Okay.
And she's on the run with them. The mansion's already gone, but the X-Men kind of don't have a home at this point.
Right.
And they're kind of globe trotting. There's not even really a team. Storm is technically in charge.
Yeah, it's like Wolverine's there. At the time, it was pretty much like Dazzler, Havoc, Psylocke.
Well, no,
Longshot,
yeah,
Wolverine,
Dazzler,
and Storm. Maybe
yeah,
Colossus.
Colossus, Colossus and Shadowcat both get their ass handed to them and end up on Muir Isle
Right.
around this time.
Yep. Because of the
Because
fight with the Marauders.
no, the Freedom Force. Because Colossus gets all like, oh wait, no, that one happens later where Colossus, no, because he gets like melted.
Right.
And Shadowcat can't turn solid anymore.
Couldn't turn solid anymore. Yeah.
Yes. So they both end up in Muir Isle. Colossus comes back at some point. Storm leaves the team, even though she had just taken over leadership, gives leadership to Wolverine, who then turns around and gives it to Rogue, even though she'd been there for about 5 minutes at this point and had just been a villain. Everyone is they're very globe-trotting. You got Longshot, Psylocke, Dazzler, Storm, Rogue,
right,
Wolverine, Havoc, and Colossus does come back at some point.
Because he died. Everybody thinks he dies in the Fall of the Mutants.
Yeah. Because he's down there with everybody else in Dallas.
Right.
And about a year after, because I guess Scott can't find can't find where Maddie ended up, and doesn't know that she's with the X-Men. He thinks she's still fine in San Francisco. Or that she went back to Alaska or something.
Right.
So he's like, okay, well, I'll just do this thing with, the other original X-Men that had come back after Jean came back. I'll do this for a little while to get them started. And that's when he sees, the X-Men dying in Dallas, including Madeline.
Yeah.
Although weirdly enough, he doesn't go looking for his fucking kid at any point.
Yeah.
He really doesn't. He's like, at no point is he like, well, my wife just died. My dead ex-girlfriend is alive again. Where the hell's my kid?
Yeah, that never, he never even thinks about that. Or if he does, it's very rarely.
And because remember at the time, baby Nathan is with Sinister.
Right.
And, but we don't know this because he had gotten kidnapped by the Marauders. They hadn't introduced Sinister, or they had just introduced Sinister like 5 issues before, but you don't know that he has the baby because you don't know that he's even connected brutally with the Marauders.
Right. He was always the face in the background, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when, because the X-Men had kind of been in and out of the Outback before they died in Dallas. They were sort of using it as a base, but not really. Like they cleaned the Reavers out of there. And then they went to Dallas. And then they died. And then they go back to, they decide to take the town that they had just cleared out. In the Outback.
Right, when they when they dealt with the it's not the Marauders, who the fuck were they?
The Reavers.
Reavers, yeah.
Yeah. They had wiped out the Reavers, kicked them out of town, then went to Dallas, got dead, got brought back to life by Roma, went back to the outback town and decided to actually live there, because that's when they decided they would do better to work from the shadows and basically be a black ops team instead of a public team. And the thing that bugs me more than anything else, though, there should still be 8 X-Men that can't be photographed, recorded, or seen by surveillance. Because the Siege Perilous didn't undo that.
Right. It just people couldn't see them.
No, people could see them. But the surveillance, all like you type in a record about Wolverine, it would vanish. It would self-delete. Like if you type, so the only accounts that were still available were print, handwritten,
right,
or drawn. So any photographs of them would, like the negatives, went bad. The video, like VHS back then, like the surveillance or even digital, would have it deleted itself. Any written records of them deleted itself. People remembered them, but there was no record of them anywhere. Of those 8 characters, 7 mutants and Maddie. And even after they later went through the Siege Perilous, because Dazzler ends up on the beach at Lila Cheney's house with Guido, finding her on the beach, like washed up. And the surveillance system in Lila Cheney's house cannot see Allison Blair, can't see Dazzler.
right.
And when Wolverine, Wolverine didn't go through the Siege Perilous.
No, he didn't, did he?
No, he was the only one that didn't. Because he wasn't with the team whenever they came back. And Psylocke forced the team through the siege. So he didn't go through, but Colossus was invisible afterwards to surveillance. So they've just kind of ignored that, because Storm, Longshot, Dazzler, Colossus, Rogue, because Rogue was invisible whenever she woke up in Carol Danvers' apartment.
Right.
So yeah, Psylocke, Storm, Colossus, Rogue, Dazzler, Longshot, and I think and Maddie should all. Oh no, Maddie never went through the Siege Perilous because she had already went bad.
Yeah, then she starts getting corrupted by Nostir.
Yeah.
And Sim.
Yeah, so she never went through it. But yeah, so looking at this, oh no, Storm didn't either because she had quote unquote died. That was when she got captured by Orphan Maker and Nanny.
Mm-hmm.
And then she got turned back into a little kid.
Right.
But yeah, the rest of them didn't. They all went through the siege, and they should all still be invisible. But all 8 of them still should be invisible to all forms of surveillance and digital records. Still irritates me that they've just completely forgotten about that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things they've forgotten about over the years.
How there's still records of Wolverine from before
Right.
that should have automatically been erased by Roma. I don't know. The Weapon X program shouldn't have any records of him. It's irritating.
Yeah, that is one of those things.
Bad continuity.
Mm-hmm. That definitely, that era of the X-Men, the whole Outback era, was definitely disjointed.
It was disjointed because it ceased being a team and really, really jumped into the soap opera. Where from scene to scene, each issue to each issue might be, this is half a Wolverine issue, but there's going to be a little bit of plot advancement on a Polaris story, on a Muir Island story, Havoc's over here, Psylocke's over doing this thing with Rogue, and Jubilee's crawling through the vents that nobody knows that she's there yet. There wasn't a team. It was a bunch of people that all kind of lived together that had superpowers and would work together from time to time when it was necessary.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember how they kind of hand waved away the whole consequences for going through the Siege Perilous.
Well,
or did they just forget about it?
Well, the only one. No, there was no real consequences. Everyone got judged and sent where they were supposed to. Colossus ended up a painter in New York, in Brooklyn, and lost his accent. Became a painter in Brooklyn, but then he had no memory of being an X-Man, no memory of being a mutant. Had a loft apartment in Brooklyn.
I kind of remember that actually.
But then he got captured and corrupted because he was a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to be very easily manipulated and corrupted by the Shadow King.
Right.
Rogue came back, split from Carol, and there was that zombie Carol versus Rogue to see who was going to be the dominant personality. And it washed away Carol's personality by the end, so she no longer had Carol's memories, but she maintained her powers. When she came back. Now, but when she came back, she actually remembered being an X-Man. And she actually went to go and find the rest of the team in the Outback. She didn't know why she was in New York in Carol's apartment.
Right.
Because Carol at the time was off in space being binary with the Starjammers. And didn't really have a physical form anymore. Psylocke
became a ninja.
Became a Japanese ninja. And
she got the James Bond treatment.
Yeah, got captured by Mojo and Spiral.
Right.
And had her eyes replaced with cameras.
Yep.
Let's see. Havoc ended up as a Genosian magistrate.
Yep, I remember that.
Let's see. And Allison Blair ended up washed up on the beach and wanted nothing to do with superhero lifestyle anymore. And Longshot ended up back in the Mojoverse because he just straight up vanished.
Right.
And he wasn't seen again until Adjectiveless X-Men number 10, 9, something like that, whenever the X-Men ended up in the Mojoverse again, where Jim Lee did that cool couple issues. But yeah, that was, everybody had consequences, but all of them sort of ended up back where they started eventually. Although Longshot never came back to our universe. He stayed in the Mojoverse after that.
Yep, that's about the time. Like I said, they kind of pushed him off to the sideline.
Yeah. Well, look, the reason why they pushed out Dazzler and a Longshot off is because Chris had to get approvals from Walt or Art Adams and Louise Simonson for everything he wanted to do with Longshot. So he replaced him with Gambit, which had approximately the same power set. And he got rid of Dazzler because he had to get approvals from Jim Shooter on everything. And replaced her with Jubilee. It's literally the reason why he created those characters.
Right.
Gambit was the Longshot replacement. Jubilee was the
Dazzler replacement. Yeah, gee, how coincidental. They're so similar in certain ways.
Exactly. I mean,
two women with light powers and a guy who throws things.
Two guys that throw things and have a lot of charm with women.
Yeah, and for completely different reasons too.
Exactly. So yeah, you had that, but and see, that leads us up to the X Factor team that I did like, which was, and in fact, I didn't even like this incarnation, like the initial Peter David incarnation with the X Factor as the government team with Havoc and Polaris and Wolfsbane, Strong Guy, Random, because that was around the same time that they relaunched. They launched X-Men. They split the X-Men team into the blue team and the gold team. And X Factor became the government team that replaced the Freedom Force. That's the team. I actually like the slightly later incarnation after Havoc was no longer on the team.
Okay.
Where Forge and Mystique, and it was kind of like their Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I didn't read too much of that, but I do remember seeing that.
Yeah, I did like that team. I thought that they did a lot of they could experiment with that team a lot more. I don't recall why Lorna left. I think it was because Havoc died. And Havoc and Lorna were a thing at the time. Yeah, so no, that's the X Factor team that I really liked.
Yeah, like I said, I never really got into X Factor. As far as like the X-Men spin-off books, the one that I personally enjoyed, and again was kind of underrated at different points, was New Mutants.
Oh, see, you know what? I never liked New Mutants until Rob came on.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mind the older team because it was honestly, maybe it's because of my age too, but it was kids at school dealing with shit. And superhero adventures at the same time. Like they literally were still kids and teenagers. There was no, oh well, this person's 16, but they act like they're 30.
Yeah, exactly. That was that I did kind of like that. I didn't like, see, the thing was I just didn't like most of the characters. They weren't that interesting to me. I was never a big fan of like Danny Moonstar or Um, uh, um, who was the other chick that's basically also Danny Moonstar that was on that team?
Karma.
Yeah, Karma, Mirage, and Karma.
Yeah.
I never gave a shit about Karma. I kind of liked Cannonball and Sunspot
Mhm.
as buddies. Um,
Rain
but
wasn't a terrible character either.
no, Rain was good. I liked her. I liked Richter.
Mm-hmm.
Like later on when he got added.
Because it seems like the characters that didn't really catch on, they kind of did away with.
Well, yeah, because they just dipped off on like Danny Moonstar and Karma and
No, they kept Danny
Magma.
around pretty much the whole run
Oh,
after a
yeah.
while.
Well, she was there for like the first 75 issues.
Yeah, she was the leader of the team for the longest time.
Yeah, and then Cannonball
Ball
became
took it
the
over,
leader.
and
Yeah.
Karma they kind of shuffled off. I thought they had killed her initially,
Yeah, they did
and then somehow she came back.
because comics.
Yes. So, and that was really early on, and then Magma
Yeah, you
they
had
kind
Magma.
of they kind of pushed off to the side
Well, yeah,
pretty early on as well.
because Magma's first of all, her powers and Sunspot's powers are virtually identical.
Yeah.
You don't need two people with heat powers, even though their heat comes from different sources. And their heat can do different things. You still don't need two hot people. And additionally, like her whole story with the whole Nova Roma thing and whether or not that's even a real place was always really fucking confusing to me. But you have like Rusty and Skids that also had their like cup of coffee on that team before they got thrown out too.
Right.
Hold on one second.
Yep. So yeah, we've been hitting the mutants a bunch so far, but I think once Doc comes back, we will.
All right.
Yeah, so I was just saying we've been hitting the mutants pretty hard tonight.
Yeah.
But that's something you and me can definitely do, both of us being X-Men fans.
Yes, but
and your knowledge is definitely way more in depth than mine in a lot of cases, so that's always good because my memory kind of sucks.
My memory, I don't know why. There's so much shit in there that just rattles around that I don't know why.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
But no, well, there are some other really. Again, we talked about the Invaders earlier as kind of like their Marvel's
yeah. The Defenders.
Which incarnation though? Because there's been so many. You got the original team with like Silver Surfer, Namor, Doctor Strange. Hulk.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the ones I'm thinking of.
But then you also have like the one with that was kind of the champion, like the when the champions kind of became the Defenders.
Yeah, then they also had that run in the 90s or
Well,
the late
had,
80s with the new Defenders, and it was
yeah,
like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah, where you had like Valkyrie and
Andromeda,
Nighthawk, a lot of like the Squadron Supreme characters.
Yeah.
They kind of ended up in there.
Because I remember reading them. I forgot what book it was, but it was I don't think it was Marvel Tales because that was a Spider-Man thing.
Sort of, yeah.
It was another one of those kind of books, and it was 2 stories per book. One was usually Cloak and Dagger, and the other was like the New Defenders.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that, but because I had stuff available to me to read from like the 70s, I had a clue who the Defenders were, and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, I'm actually like flipping through some. This is Marvel Team Up, Marvel Tales.
Yeah, it wasn't either of those. It wasn't Marvel 2-in-1. It was a very short-lived thing they had in the 80s.
Marvel Action Hour? No.
No.
Marvel Double Feature? No, that was 70s. Fuck. Who knows? It wasn't Marvel Premiere.
Nope. Because that usually only focused on one story per character.
Yeah, it wasn't Marvel Spotlight.
Let's see.
Was it Marvel Comics Presents?
No.
No, because that ended up being eventually the Wolverine
Strange
book.
Tales.
Strange Tales.
After issue number 11, Marvel combined the bi-monthly titles Cloak and Dagger and Doctor Strange into a monthly revival of the double feature series Strange Tales.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember the book.
I'm not saying that version is underrated because that was just not good.
No.
I'm talking about like the original Defenders.
Yeah.
Because it also took characters with that. They took characters other than, Valkyrie and the Gargoyle.
Yes.
It took some fairly popular characters with the Hulk, Doctor Strange, Submariner, Silver Surfer. Even if they weren't popular, they were known.
Yes, they were, and they kind of didn't have. It was like the weird mashup of here's characters that probably could work on a team, but they don't have a team, so let's stick them all together.
Yeah, and it was kind of because some of the stories were good. I went back recently and read the trade for the Six Fingered Hand story.
Okay.
Which was a big story arc with the Defenders, and it was very goddamn good. It was, in my opinion, it was on par or better than what the Avengers were doing.
In fairness, for most of its existence, almost everything else was doing better than the Avengers was doing.
Yeah. They hit that period after a certain point where it's like, ooh, this is getting pretty rote.
Yeah.
And like then they spiced it back up again.
Yeah, after about issue 50, honestly, Avengers kind of got it was a very middling title.
Yeah.
And then in the 80s, half the Marvel universe were Avengers.
Where now the entire Marvel universe is an Avenger.
Yes. Yeah.
Including the villains.
Yes. No, but I kind of liked, and then you get into like the weird eras of the Defenders, like where they're not even the Defenders, like when they're the Order.
Right.
Because that was just another version of the defense. And then there was the Secret Defenders, where it was like the 90s. It was Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Nomad.
Yeah.
And Doctor Strange.
Yeah, weird. But that was also the same time we got the Midnight Suns.
Yeah.
And and you've heard me say this before, for whatever reason, Marvel does not handle Mystic and Cosmic very well.
Oh yeah, and Darkhawk was on that team.
Yeah,
and
it was weird. So it was incredibly 90s, like you said.
Julia Carpenter.
Yep. I remember that book. That was incredibly 90s.
Later, I think War Machine ended up on the team.
Another one of those, like, hey, we're going to bring something back, but it's not going to be the same thing that you guys remember or want.
Yeah.
We're going to change the name, but we're going to advertise it in a way that you're going to think you're going to get the old thing back, but no, you're not.
Yeah, and then that book ended up with a rather rotating cast. I'm looking at it right now. That was a weird rotating cast too.
Well, so was the Defenders, though. Really,
Sleepwalker.
Oh wow, really?
Yep, Sleepwalker was on it for a period. War Machine.
With some of the characters, you think it was supposed to be like a magic team, kind of like Justice League Dark.
Yeah,
but having War Machine on it makes me think not so much.
Yeah. Let's see. There was one issue where it was Cap, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Strange. Then Thunderstrike. War Machine. Let's see. Drax.
Okay.
The Super Scroll. Thanos, Rhino, Nitro, and the Titanium Man.
Wow.
Deadpool, Luke Cage, Dr. Druid.
I didn't even think he was still around to be doing anything with Deadpool.
Iron Fist and Giant Man.
Hmm.
Archangel and Iceman and Cadaver and Shadow Man.
Hmm.
That can't be right, because Shadow Man was a Valiant character.
No, that's Shadow Hawk you're thinking of, I think.
No,
Wait,
Shadow Man was a.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
That was the one they did the video game on.
Yep. And then U.S. Agent. Oh, wow. 2 different Spider Women
Let me guess, the Julia Carpenter one.
and Jessica Drew.
Okay, that was probably later on.
Yeah, in the same issue. Cloak, or I'm sorry, Dagger, Deathlock, Drax on one team. Oh, and then you get right near the end, you get Silver Surfer, Namor, Hulk, and I don't know who in the hell this Cadaver character is.
Name doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, Shadow Woman. Slaymaker. Who in the hell are these characters?
90s Marvel creations at their finest.
I know, right?
I mean, they gave us so many gems that lasted for so long in the 90s.
Yeah, and then let's see. And then you had the Order, which was it was Doctor Strange where he wore that weird mask.
Yep, I remember that.
And he wore like tights. He wore like the he wore spandex. But he still had the cloak but with a mask.
They Dr. Fated him up.
Yeah.
Because
basically
we've talked about the 90s version of Dr. Fate, and oh god.
Just fate.
Yeah, just fate. No golden helm either. Stupid red Ankh makeup over his eye.
Uh-huh. But yeah, this had Joe Fixit Hulk.
Okay.
With Namor, Doctor Strange in spandex, and Silver Surfer. That was volume 1 of the Order. Volume 2 of the Order, that was whenever they tried to make it part of the Initiative after Civil War. And it was a bunch of no-name characters. Pepper Potts was in it, though. Oh, that's weird. Wait, I don't know how this works. Maul was in it from fucking Wildcats. Unless they had a character that was also named Maul that was also named Jeremy Stone. These are a bunch of characters I've literally never heard of. Anthem, Heavy, Calamity, Pierce, Ivana, Corona, Infernal Man, Mulholland Black, and yeah, it fucking Matt Fraction. I literally have no idea who any of these characters are.
No, they don't ring a bell for me either.
Yeah. Um, that was the, but that was one of those post Civil War when they were doing the initiative with the 50 state initiative, and you had all those different random teams. Every state had its own Avengers team. Do you remember that era?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's it was one of the state's teams. I guess Virginia's. I don't know why, but whatever. I'm trying to think of other good underrated Marvel teams though.
I was gonna jokingly say Power Pack, but I took the high road on that one.
You know, it's hard to say whether or not that's overrated or not, or underrated or not. It did last a good long while.
Yeah, and they were, I gotta give you that for not only that, but they were also smart with that book.
Yeah,
They were literally kids. So like if they did come across like another hero, they were absolutely awestruck by it.
yes,
So they captured that, and they didn't cross over with the older heroes.
not very often because, and
No.
when they did, most of those older heroes were like, "You kids go fucking home."
Yeah, get the hell out of here. That's cool. You got powers. Go home.
Yeah, your children get out of here.
Because I know they crossed over with Thor once,
Well, there
which
was the
which was
couple
during
issues.
the Mutant Massacre.
Yes, and there was that one issue of uh that Barry Windsor Smith did of X-Men of Uncanny where Wolverine
Yep.
and Julia Power
Mm-hmm.
um and like she saves him.
Right. There was that. I think they crossed over with Spider-Man a couple times.
Yeah,
And obviously the Fantastic Four.
absolutely, because they were basically a Fantastic Four spin-off book.
I think that's what kind of kept it going, was the fact because at the time Fantastic Four hadn't hit its worst period.
No, it hadn't.
It still wasn't as popular as it was in the 60s and 70s,
Oh no, not at all.
but it still hadn't hit, what happens later.
Yeah.
And so I think that might have been something that, people who like the Fantastic Four knew who Power Pack were.
Yeah, I think for the most part.
And if I recall correctly, they tried lumping it in with all the other books that they were gearing towards younger kids.
They did, and I think that's actually what hurt them in the end, because
Mm.
all the rest of those books weren't really Marvel Universe books. They were a lot of licensed properties or little kind of like not really part of the Marvel Universe.
The only one, I can remember, one of the ads in the back of whatever book I was reading at the time, but it wasn't for all Marvel comics. It was only like the ones that were aiming towards kids, and it was like Power Pack. And the other one that I recall on the list was Peter Porker.
Yeah, again, not Marvel Universe.
Well, no. I mean, which is funny because that was just honestly, in my opinion, ripping off Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has actually crossed into the mainline DC universe a couple times.
Yeah, and well, I mean, Peter Porker crossed into the 616 on a handful of occasions, even before Spider-Verse.
Okay, I was not actually aware that they did that. Maybe you would think it would make sense that they would.
Yeah, like they do it as in like an issue of like Marvel Team Up or Marvel Tales or some shit. I don't even know if they did, or probably like Spectacular Spider-Man.
Right, because wasn't that kind of like, it was part of the mainline Spider-Man, but at the same time it was kind of on the side.
Well, Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man generally on and off, they would be kind of just standalone,
right,
one-off stories that can kind of take place at any point in continuity.
Right.
Like they are not really, they weren't contributing to the ongoing narrative.
Right.
So for the most part, it didn't really matter when it happened. And sometimes it was just they just forget about that issue.
Right. Yeah. And, and sometimes I miss there being that for the people like, me and a buddy of mine have talked about this before. Everything being just this one ongoing continuity. Fine. They've done that, whatever. But everything being, the event after event after event, let's go back. Or if you want to keep doing that, that's fine too, whatever. But could you put out a book that's just, like one off stories?
Well,
Or just or a story that goes like 2, maybe 3 issues, and that's it, and then you move on. Obviously there's continuity. You can do continuity with that if you want, but keep it completely separate from everything else. So the people who don't want to deal with all the events that are ongoing all the time can still pick up a comic book monthly,
yeah.
whatever, just and read, for example, a Spider-Man story and not have to buy 8 million other books.
Well, that was
Catch up.
But the thing was, even ASM back then was that. It was honestly, it was just
a lot of books back then were just kind of like that one-off.
Yeah, and there'd be that conflict, but the B plot would be this ongoing narrative. Every issue had kind of its own A plot, maybe a 2-issue, sometimes 3-issue A plot, instead of like everything is a 6-issue A plot with no B plot or C plot.
Well, for example, look how long they took to build up to the initial Clone Saga.
Oh yeah,
and I'm talking the build up, and you didn't even know that was coming.
No, but that's also the way that the original like Great Darkness Saga did in Legion.
Didn't read that.
Inferno. They built up to that for like 5 years, and you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And there was a few other ones too.
But nowadays you get, DC's done this a bunch, like a line of books that are or even in the ongoings, look, this is the build up to the event.
Yeah, well, they try to sell you on the build up instead of just selling you on having an ongoing B plot.
I mean, I'll admit the 2 times that I recall DC doing it, I know they did it at least once for Final Crisis. And I think they also did it for Infinite Crisis. And those 2 build-ups really weren't terrible.
Well, you're talking about 52 and Countdown?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, but that was a dedicated title for it.
Right.
Instead of just having kind of an ongoing C plot going on in the background over like 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, and then it finally build to an event or a crossover or something that you didn't expect it to.
Right. With Countdown and 52. Well, 52, not as you didn't realize it as much as it was building towards a big crossover like that. People probably figured it was going to.
Well,
Countdown is like, Countdown to Final Crisis. Gee, I wonder what's coming.
Well, see, what I'm thinking is more along the lines of like, okay, so you had Secret Wars that led into, and over the course of the next 6 years, it led into the whole Venom story that led into the whole, like, that year-long from like issue 300 to 320,
something like that, yeah.
With Venom kind of as a lurking thing in the background, and then it got all the way up into the 340s where it's their next major conflict that's even worse, and then into the 360s where now you're introducing Carnage into it too, all the way up to 375. You have you have like 10 years.
Yep. And they still were able to keep other shit going on.
Exactly. And every month, you basically, for most of those months, you got a one-off story, except for when they did like Assassination Plot.
Right. Or, books would have their little minor story arcs that carried over for more than a book or 2.
But even then, they did it when they were doing the twice a month
Mm-hmm.
in the summers. So when ASM went bi-weekly in the summers, they did Assassination Plot, and then the following summer when it went bi-weekly, they did Return of the Sinister Six or Revenge of the Sinister
Yeah.
Six, whichever one that was,
Yep.
with after Larson had come on board the book
Right.
and replaced Todd. And then it led into another Venom story that led into the Carnage story that led into the big major final payoff of basically going back to Secret Wars number 8
Right.
at ASM 375. And even that wasn't really the end of it, because it launched into the whole Jackal thing again, with the return of Peter Parker's parents that turns out to be clones, that ended up leading into the whole, clone saga.
Right.
And now you can draw a straight line through that. A straight through line from Secret Wars number 8 to essentially the end of the Clone Saga. And that was around the time of Heroes Reborn and Onslaught and everything else. And you could draw a straight line from that's 15 years.
Yeah, that was a long time.
12, 15 years of.
Could you do me a favor and just vamp for a second? I got to take care of something real
Yeah,
fast.
sure. So that's something that we lose in today's comics. That's something that nobody does. Now it's just 6 issues of a story that moves into 6 issues of the next story that moves into 6 issues of the next story. There's very little through line. I mean, they don't even mention the B or C plots at all to keep you invested in them. And then when they come back and decide, oh yeah, we're going to pay that off. You're seeing it in ASM right now. Oh, we're going to finally pay off the What Did Peter do thing at issue 20 or 18 or whatever it is. You're 18 months into the book. You haven't even fucking mentioned it in a year. You just haven't even mentioned it. And you think that that's an actual payoff. Just because we waited doesn't make it a payoff. A payoff is whenever you've built something. You didn't build shit. They didn't build a damn thing with actually making people care about the plot. The last time anybody cared about that plot on ASM right now was before issue 1 even came out, when they were still soliciting it, and it started as the mystery box. Now, 18 months later, they're finally going to tell us what happened, but they're doing it without any of the, kind of regular serialized addition to the story and the mystery and the lore that they used to do, that they would do, in 2 panels or 1 page in every issue of ASM, when you had that through line from 252 to, oh shit, you there, man?
Yeah. I just accidentally yanked out my cable.
Yeah, but I mean, you had that the through line on that whole Venom, to Carnage, to Jackal, to Clone Saga thing. They're finally paying off this mystery box supposedly for What Did Peter do, but they haven't actually built out the mystery or the lore. It was a thing happened,
right,
and then they forgot to remind us
that it happened,
or hint at what that thing might have been, or build the suspense and the mystery. Look, just mentioning something and then not giving you an answer for 18 months isn't a heightening anticipation.
It isn't even building towards anything. It's going to make people go, oh, okay. And
Yeah,
like you said, they're going to forget about it.
yeah, it's like years ago, I had a second set of keys for my old car, and they vanished one day. I couldn't find them. Do you know what I did over the next 2 years about that second set of keys? Nothing.
Right.
And when I finally found them in another like coat that I hadn't worn in 3 years, and I reached in my pocket and I'm like, oh, there's that extra set of keys. Shit. Do you know what I did? That wasn't the payoff to a 2-year long, 3-year long search for my spare keys. That was, oh yeah, I forgot that I even
wore this jacket,
lost those keys in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like the mystery, there wasn't me constantly coming back going, oh, I should probably find that extra set of keys every 2 months for the next 3 years, and then I finally get a payoff. No, it was just, I looked for them for an hour, couldn't find them, forgot about it for 3 years, found them. That's what they're doing. That's the equivalent of what they're doing with the Spider-Man mystery right now. There's no giant anticipation that's built up and then paid off. It's just, I found those keys I couldn't find. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
It's just amazing though how people will look at Secret Wars. Oh, it was just like a commercial for a toy line, and it was.
Yeah, it was.
But so many things and status quo changes spun out of that book.
Yeah.
With Spidey, what we were just talking about, how it gave a plot line for
the whole Venom story.
Yeah, like you said, was it like 15 years almost?
Yeah.
You know, there's a status quo change with the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
After that,
with Ben
being
gone,
I believe there's something of a status quo change with the X-Men. It
was
more like personality changes.
Colossus
got emo.
He got emo and had a wife.
Wolverine actually began to trust Rogue more.
Yeah.
Because she was there during all that. And it's like, okay, she could have turned on us in any minute, and she didn't. So,
yeah, so not bad.
Spider-Man, obviously, again, not to repeat myself. Don't remember if there was a status quo change with the Hulk.
Not particularly, as far as I know. I don't really recall.
I don't either. I don't recall there being one for the Avengers either.
No, not really. I mean,
I think if anything, maybe Thor left the team because it's like, oh, there's these beings out there that are that powerful.
Oh, wait, no. Rhodey was already the Iron Man in Secret Wars.
Was he still Iron Man at that point?
Yeah, because maybe that was what brought Tony back.
Maybe.
Maybe that was the impetus to bring for Tony to return.
Yeah, because that wasn't even the era of the red and white armor yet.
No, because I think Tony came back with the Silver Centurion armor after Secret Wars. I'm curious now.
Yeah, Fiend Machine, that would have been an interesting plot thread had they kept that one going.
What?
The romance between Wasp and Magneto.
Oh, yeah. That's one that, they dropped that like as soon as they got back from.
Well, it's also one of those things they played, if I remember right, they played it off. They're like, oh, he said something completely batshit. And she was like, nope, people were right about you.
Yeah, well, because remember, he was a good guy going into Secret Wars because he was still,
because that first Avengers versus X-Men miniseries, which was essentially the trial of Magneto, that took place after.
Correct.
And I believe that actually led into that, where he kind of realized like, oh, okay, I have to repent.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to find.
And it still amuses me how he became sort of a favorite character of people after, even Marvel wrote him off after 12 issues?
Who? Magneto?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Stranger's going to take him away. It's like, okay, so he was just a run-of-the-mill baddie.
Correct.
Which
For
is,
a while.
For a while, he was just, the equivalent, the X-Men equivalent of Dr. Octopus.
Yes, but that had a lot to do with the fact that they didn't know what the fuck to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah. I think around issue 173 or so, 170 is where Tony or Rhodey, where Rhodey becomes Iron Man.
Right.
And that would have been in 83. Which would have been a year or two before.
I want to say it was during Secret Wars where they realized that it was not that it was Rhodey, but oh hey, Iron Man's black.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he gets hurt or something, and Reed goes to help him, in the medical bay or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this guy's black.
Yeah.
Which they were like, well, we don't care. Which also just led to, oh, it's just Tony Stark's bodyguard.
Yes, exactly.
Or I don't remember because certain people I'm trying to remember. Did people in the Avengers know that Iron Man was Tony Stark at that point?
I don't believe so because he was still going with the. That's my bodyguard.
That's my bodyguard, and I'm bankrolling the Avengers.
Yeah, and I'm just the bankroll for the Avengers. Okay.
And led to, oh yeah, it really is just his bodyguard.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, you know what? No, Rhodey stays as Iron Man at least until issue 200.
Okay.
I believe, because that is yeah, because that was the where he got the Silver Centurion, where he went to the Silver Centurion armor. They changed the logo.
Yeah, to a triangle. Oh no,
Yeah.
the actual Iron Man logo.
Yeah, the Iron Man logo to
not
look more like for the eye to look like an I-beam.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really terrible logo in my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
And it only lasted for 15 issues because at 215 is where they went to the one with the rivets in it.
Right. Well, they did something like that before that too, back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Not quite as like, wow, those are some serious rivets, but
yeah, because the original logo had small rivets around the entire every as like an inner.
Yeah, it was like the letters were indented into like a I-beam with rivets on it.
Yeah, they were riveted into onto it, and then that stayed the Iron Man. Oh no, let's see. They added the rivets onto the Iron Man logo on looks like about issue 6. I think that was when they added the original rivets, and then they went with the huge rivets and the double stacked title where it had Iron and then below that Man instead of Iron Man all as one on one line. I'm just trying to think of. See, here's the thing: Marvel doesn't have a lot of good, underrated other teams.
No, they kind of did away with that after a certain point. They just like, okay, nobody cares about these characters. We're just going to shelve them for now. Maybe pull them out in an appearance or whatever, but they're not going to get their own.
The thing. What I mean is, like, okay, the Eternals are stupid. The humans are boring.
Mm-hmm.
The The Defenders we talked about.
They were hit or miss.
There's every other team is either a derivative of the Fantastic Four, like the Fantastic Force,
right? Or Power Pack, like we said,
or Power Pack, or the Future Foundation. Derivative of an Avengers squad. It's the West Coast Avengers, or the Avengers, or Avengers International, Great Lakes Avengers. So it's just an Avengers team, or an offshoot of the X-Men.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the X-Men really went crazy with it.
They have a million of them. But there aren't, other than, okay, you have the Champions, which
never caught on.
No, it was another, like the original Champions that had like
Hercules, Angel, Iceman, Hercules, Black Widow,
Beast.
And was Beast on that team?
Beast was on and off that team, and then he was in solo. He was like he was like he was like the main character in like Marvel Spotlight or Marvel Showcase or
right. And then they moved him over to the Avengers.
And then they moved to the Avengers after he turned furry.
Curious who else was on that team.
But it was the LA based team.
Was it LA? It was LA and not
San Francisco.
Not San Francisco. Okay.
No, it was Southern California, so it was either LA, Malibu. I think it was LA because West Coast Avengers were out of Malibu. Because they worked out of Tony's Malibu house.
Yeah, the main team from the original run from 75 to 78, and it only had 17 issues in 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, it was Angel, Black Widow, Dark Star, Ghost Riders, Hercules, and Iceman.
Yeah. Not exactly the it was, again, you're dealing with a bunch of characters that couldn't stick on other titles or couldn't carry their own titles. So they got slapped together. The Defenders were like that. The Champions were like that.
But the Defenders at least caught on a bit more.
A little bit, yeah. Heroes for Hire did that.
Yeah. But again, that one also caught on for a different reason, though.
Yeah.
I think because it was the whole street level, a combination of the street level stuff and the martial arts side of things with Iron Fist at the time.
It was the 1970s. Let's slap blaxploitation and kung fu into the same book because they have the same target audience. And boom.
Yeah. Speaking of kung fu, I've actually been reading some Hong Kong kung fu comics.
Oh.
And they're pretty much superhero comics without capes and costumes.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Like they, pulling out stuff like that. Dude, no, that would have killed you. What in the literal fuck? Oh, okay. Some sort of mystic kung fu power protected you. I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's actually a Donnie Yen movie based around the one book called Oriental Heroes. That's the name of the fucking book.
I'm down.
But the name of the movie is called Dragon Tiger Gate or Tiger Dragon Gate.
I have seen that. I haven't watched that movie, but I mean, I've walked past it and go, "What the fuck is this?"
It's literally like the origin story of like the three main characters in the book.
Okay.
And it's not bad. I mean, if you like kung fu movies, it's pretty good.
I'm trying to think what other.
I believe there's another movie too for one of the other ones that came out over there that was really popular called The Blood Sword. I think they did a movie for the secondary book called The Blood Sword Dynasty.
Okay. I'm trying to think if Marvel has any other. I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, but again, I don't know if you consider them underrated because when they were around initially, nobody really cared.
And then whenever they came back in the 80s and 90s version was very popular.
Yeah. And then when they did them again recently.
It was critically popular, like the Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning
Mhm.
run that inspired the version that we got in the movies, um, with like the Annihilation Wave and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, it was critically lauded. It wasn't a big sales juggernaut though. It didn't sell very well. That's why it only got like 30, 40 issues.
But it, again, because I remember a buddy of mine was telling to me, years back, like, oh, they're doing a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I'm like, why? Because my first thought went, because I hadn't really looked at anything recent. My first thought went back to the 70s version
Oh, with like the robot.
with like, the dude who's like the Colossus ripoff,
Yeah.
the chick with the flaming hair,
The,
Vance Astro, Nova, and
yeah.
Yondu. I'm like, what?
Yeah. The 31st century.
Mm-hmm. And my buddy's like, no, dumbass, they did a new book recently. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah. But even the 90s one, the 80s, 90s one, that was the 31st century as well.
I kind of feel that Guardians of the Galaxy was Marvel's answer to the Legion.
It was.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh, absolutely. And then the 80s, 90s version was absolutely the Legion, the Legion of Superheroes.
Right.
100%.
But it took Marvel so long to copy that idea because Legion had been around since the 50s.
Yeah, but they tried it with the original Guardians, and it flopped so fucking hard that they waited again until the 80s to try it again, and that's when it actually took off.
Yeah, I know this is going to be considered blasphemy by some people, but I could never get into Legion.
Neither could I.
It was all the naming conventions, like, oh, Matter Lad and Moon Girl. It's like, oh, this isn't the 50s anymore. Could we at least update the names somewhat?
Hey, don't talk shit on Arm Fall Off Boy, whose power is that his arms fall off.
You're kidding, right?
No, I'm not. There's a character called Arm Fall Off Boy.
Jesus Christ. I mean, but I will admit, though, at least the Legion gave us the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, that was Marvel's second attempt at copying the Legion.
And that one actually
one actually worked, but it couldn't work as its own.
No, because nobody, like I said, I don't think Marvel handles cosmic well. And that would be, something required there. I mean, because look at most of the cosmic books they've tried putting out. Do we need to bring up Quasar?
Yeah.
That was just terrible.
Exactly.
They've never been able to pull cosmic off, and I personally think DC does that in Magic better.
Captain Marvel, the original, Marvel,
that was good stuff.
The Peter David Genisvel, none of them worked. None of them. I mean, they might have been good books, but they were never marquee. They were never central to the Marvel universe.
Right.
Because the Marvel universe is too grounded to do cosmic on that kind of level and make it central. And every time the more they attempt to do it, the worse the Marvel universe gets.
Yeah.
Like the Infinity Gauntlet was great when it was just a spin-off of all like the past 4 years of stories from Silver Surfer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fine. But then we got the Infinity War.
And then Infinity Crusade.
And then Infinity.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that me and a buddy of mine have talked about. We'll just hang out, drink beers, and talk comics. And it's amazing how Thanos went from essentially a nobody.
With the Thanos copter.
Please tell me he didn't.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
He when he was when he got first introduced as an Iron Man villain.
Yep.
He wasn't, I think he was an alien. but he actually had the Thanos copter.
Oh
It was a
boy.
helicopter that said Thanos on the side. Hold on, let me see. Oh,
I mean, I know my buddy's got the first appearance of him and then the issue right before that with him, in the last panel or the foreshadowing of him. He's got both of those graded, but oh boy.
yeah. Hold on, let me. I'm gonna pull it up, and I will share it.
I mean, they gave Spider-Man the Spidey mobile for Christ's sake. So why does this doesn't surprise me?
Yep. Here, hold on. All right, I'm trying to share this. I don't know if you can.
There it is. Oh, Jesus. It's just a normal helicopter, too,
Yes.
with that.
It's literally just a generic helicopter.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah.
And I was not aware of that. That's amusing and cringe-inducing all at the same time.
Uh-huh.
Because
And
it's
hold
just
on.
like just a news copter.
Here. Yeah. I got an even better one.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
They really didn't know what the fuck to do with him at first.
Not a goddamn clue. Wasn't until Starlin like really started like I think it was when he was I don't know, maybe on Surfer.
Could be.
That's when he started figuring it out. Because remember, Drax started as also an Iron Man villain, and he was a human whose wife was killed by Thanos.
Right.
And that's why, and he subjected himself to some experiments to get power to beat Thanos.
Right.
Now he's an alien from an entirely different world. That's one of the last survivors of his planet.
Yep,
that Thanos killed.
Right. Yeah, it's well, that's like the thing like people have been bringing up talking about Marvel and the cosmic shit. It's like, oh hey, now you finally bring out Adam Warlock. Now that Thanos is gone.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much there Marvel, the more they lean into cosmic as central to their line, the less Marvel it feels like.
Yeah. Because DC's always had that cosmic thing going on.
Exactly. I mean, their biggest superhero is an alien.
Yeah, and then you had other books that had some popularity at very different eras, like Adam Strange.
Yes.
Or Meteor Man.
Yeah, you get the sci-fi era characters. Then you add all the Kirby Fourth World stuff.
Yep.
That has become so very central to
very
the DC
so.
universe. Whereas I'm sorry, but the Celestials, the Eternals, the Kree, the Inhumans, the Shi'ar, those have to stay all on the periphery of the Marvel universe because their main characters are a super soldier from World War II, a guy that made an armor,
yep,
a bunch of mutants,
a guy who's bitten by a radioactive spider,
a bunch of science freaks, Hulk, Spider-Man, the Fantastic, even the Fantastic Four, as much as they are cosmic, they're not.
They are and they aren't. I mean, there's been eras when they've been doing some cosmic shit, and then there's also been eras when it was more science, and then there's been eras where it's more just generic superhero stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But, for the most part, they'll do a little bit of science, a little bit of exploration, and a lot of generic superhero stuff. But even in Fantastic Four, it is not, the cosmic side is not central.
Yeah.
It might be the multiverse side with like Annihilus and the Negative Zone and stuff like that, and parallel universes, but them actually like doing space travel.
Right. It happens, not consistently,
not regularly, even during Fantastic Four's heyday. It was not central to the title. And the more that the Marvel tries to make those galactic universal level things important and central, the less interesting the Marvel universe gets, because the idea that the Avengers, as good as they are, or the X-Men, as powerful as they are, could go up against eternity.
Yeah, no. None of those, the in-betweener, the living tribunal, eternity, death.
Yeah.
They would look at any mortal beings and be like, go away.
Yes.
Get out of here, kid. You bother me.
Exactly. And that's why you can accept that they exist, but them actually interacting on any sort of a regular basis.
Like, eternity interacting once in a while with the surfer. Okay. Usually it made sense in the context of the story.
Exactly. And even then,
because it didn't happen all the time.
Yeah. And Galactus being the last survivor of the previous universe is, that makes him, because that means he had to be outside of the universe and outside of eternity.
Right.
In order to survive the end of the previous eternity, in order to come back into, eternity, which is our universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't disagree with you on that at all. I do think Marvel needs to stay in the more, not to say that they can't do cosmic shit, but like you said, they can't make it a focus because it never works out well. And lately, unfortunately, DC seems to be doing it too often.
It either makes the heroes far too fucking powerful, or the power ratio between normal humans and universal level entities a lot smaller than it should be.
Right.
Because there's certain humans that can fight certain Avengers, and certain Avengers that apparently can fight universal level beings.
Yeah. No, that's something that should never be.
So if Shang-Chi can go toe-to-toe with Captain America, who can probably go up against Thor, who can go against the Surfer, who can go against Galactus, who can go against Eternity, you're 5 steps between Bob on the street and essentially the entire universe.
Yeah. No. I mean, like, case in point with DC recently, breaching the source wall. I don't think that was ever intended when they came up with that concept.
Nope.
It's one of those things of like, no, this is the edge of the universe. Period.
Yes. The idea of breaching that kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah.
Because I read both Metal and Death Metal, and I was like, what fresh hell is this?
Yeah, because
and to be honest, they both started off pretty okay. And then it just got completely batshit after a while. No pun intended.
Here's the thing. If they are going to breach the source wall, the only thing that can be on the other side of it is oblivion.
Right.
Nothingness. Not space, nothingness.
Yeah, and of course then some entity comes through and look, It's the most powerful thing that this universe has ever seen.
And
And-
honestly, at that point, all you're doing is telling the same story that the Ultimates did. Not Ultimate Universe, the Ultimates, the one with Blue Marvel, America
Mhm.
Chavez, Captain Marvel.
Right.
that one that had Ken Rocafort art, the one that was actually really fucking good.
Hmm.
Yeah, all you're doing is telling that story. We already saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, and many people who talk about comics, not that I talk about it all that often, I just don't have any faith in the modern industry. Like you said, they need that come to Jesus moment, but with some of the people heading it or writing or drawing or whatever the case may be, those type of people generally don't have those moments because, ego and hubris and whatever other reason they could possibly fathom.
Yes, but that I think is again that's another conversation for a whole other time
Yeah.
because we can go off on that one for hours.
Yeah. Speaking of, we've been going for 2.5, so I figured we'd wind it down since I know you probably have to work tomorrow. I'm the lucky bastard on vacation, not yourself.
Yes, that is correct.
But as always, I appreciate you being on.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to have a random impromptu
Just shoot
bullshit.
the shit kind of conversation.
Yes, with no real
No real, a vague plan.
yes,
I mean, at least this time we stuck to the topic better than we have any other time.
exactly. But no formal structure.
Mm-hmm.
And we can just kind of go off on our tangents.
Yep.
Oh, you know what though?
Hmm.
I did pick up something that this is me giving a shot to something.
Okay.
I was at Ollie's yesterday.
Yep.
I had luck there about a week ago.
Yeah, I saw that you picked out that big Kirby Thor thing.
Giant Kirby Thor thing. That thing is
You gotta love a book that doubles as a weapon.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I have a number of those, but this one also probably doubles as a step stool.
Yeah, I think it was massive.
Yeah. But and I also picked up that Absolute Superman Batman Volume 2. I would have preferred Volume 1, but okay.
Whatever, it's a start. You could always probably pick up the Volume 1 at another point somewhere else if you see it. So
exactly. I'll just wait until that ends up in a Ollie's too, because
yeah, I gotta check that out, the one by me, because they might actually carry Gunpla kits.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Because some places have tried selling them and they just don't move.
Yeah. Well, I did find something yesterday. I didn't find anything that I was looking for, but they did have something they didn't have the other day. Golden Age Superman Omnibus Volume 3.
Oh, wow.
You know, they've been doing all those DC Golden Age omnibuses.
Yep.
Yeah, those are normally like $75.
Yeah.
They had it for 20.
Oh, nice.
So I just said, I'm gonna pick it up. Regardless of whether or not I, decide to just wait 3 months and then sell it on eBay for 40.
Right. But it's still something nice to have.
Exactly. I haven't opened it yet. But I'm sitting there going, maybe I will dive into some some Golden Age Superman.
It's not probably not bad. I'm sure there's some other stuff that'd be good from the Golden Age.
Yeah. Especially before it starts getting into like the hokey Silver Age Superman stuff. That's where I kind of draw the line.
Yeah, superhero comics in the 50s definitely had a
yes, I know exactly what you mean. But it set the stage for what DC became. And when we got into the 60s and there was a little bit more sensibility, a little bit more, there was still a lot of hokiness. Don't.
Oh, I've said it before and you've heard me say it. I felt even into the 90s, and maybe it's me just being, a rebellious teenager. I always felt DC Comics had a more kid-friendly vibe.
Absolutely. But Marvel, they were founded with a little bit more serious sensibility. And DC was in a more fantastical sensibility, which doesn't appeal to me as much. Then again, I'm one of those guys that likes like near future sci-fi, and
Right.
it's bored out of my mind if you're talking more than 40 years into the future for
Yeah, and
my science fiction
yeah, it's weird because there's certain science fiction, like Gundam doesn't really have a
timeline.
it does. That's the thing, is it does. But they don't kind of equate it to
Yeah,
where it would be in our timeline, because like the big tech that they have in what they refer to as the origin story of that timeline, literally called Mobile Suit Gundam Origins,
yeah.
the big tech they have is a space elevator.
Okay, so you're probably only 30 to 50
Yeah,
years
I
into the
mean,
future.
because there's one long timeline, and when I say long, I mean fucking long, called the Universal Century, and a lot of series fall within different points in that, and then everything else is just its own multiversal kind of deal.
Yeah.
But that, they don't really hint at when, like I'm not a fan of Warhammer 40K because that's literally 40,000 years into the future.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why I like BattleTech. That's only about 100, 150 years in the future.
Still a little too far for me.
But
I'm looking like
but the tech in BattleTech is, yeah, they have mechs, but they're not like, Japanese style mechs. We're looking like, does that thing have part of a bulldozer as its cockpit?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more like that old computer game Mech Warrior.
That's exactly what it is Mech Warrior. It's that universe.
Yeah. So, yeah, like look, science fiction that I can't potentially see come to fruition in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Doesn't it bores me.
Right. So like Star Trek isn't your thing, Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah, don't give a fuck about Star Trek.
Yeah, the only thing with Gundam that gets kind of like, is evidently some physicist discovered some particle that allowed them to shrink down nuclear reactors to about the size of a refrigerator.
Yeah, so that you can
Actually, because Gundams, while they're large mechs, they're not like these giant super robots like we saw in the 70s and 80s that towered over buildings.
Yes.
We're not looking at like Voltron sized or anything like that. They're still large, don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
They're not like these, you can definitely tell that were meant for military use.
Yeah, but they're the, size of a, I don't know, medium-sized office building in.
Yeah, or maybe
on the outskirts of a middle metropolitan city.
I would say a little bigger than that, but we're not talking like Empire State Building size by any stretch.
15 stories.
Yeah, it's
20.
Probably, yeah, 50, yeah, it's probably about right.
Yeah. Well, brother, I think I'm gonna dip.
Yeah. Again, appreciate you being on. Like I said backstage earlier, we'll have to see who we can't get involved in our shenanigans the next time. I have to plan a little earlier in advance so I can get the notice out there and see who wants to hop in.
Yes, absolutely.
But everybody who stopped by tonight in the chat, Yule, thank you for stopping by. Love to have you on sometime. My buddy
Fiend
Rob.
Machine. Yep.
That's my friend and boss.
Dope.
Richard Stackpole, thanks for stopping by. Anybody else who popped by, they didn't just lurked and didn't say anything in the chat, I absolutely fine with that because I do that a lot myself. But thank you for stopping by. Everyone have a great night, and I will see you soon.
Later, man.